Hello everyone and welcome to week 4. This week we're going to be looking at how to print onto fabric. So all the things that we've been doing in the previous 3 weeks we're going to now apply to fabric. So you know the drill by now, don't you? Get the kettle on, get yourself a brew and let's get started. Printing onto fabric is exactly the same principle as printing onto card. There's no difference in the technique at all. So let's have a look at how I've created this piece here. I'm just taking a bit of spare fabric here, a bit of scrap fabric if you like, and I'm using the cog stamp that I used on the last lot of cards when I showed you how to make the cards. The nice thing about getting a little stamp, something like this, is that you can do what I call a random pattern rather than a geometric pattern very easily with something like this. So just stamping that up, and again you can always see how I don't and ah about where's it going to go, will it look right here, what will happen if I get that in the wrong place. Just put it on any old how, and then see how you can fit the pieces together afterwards. That's part of the creative process, part of the fun. So I'm going to do 3 in that colour. Usual wiping off. A bit more with the baby wipe. And let's choose the next colour. In that space there, that just fits nicely. Let's have a look, how would we twist that round? That angle, that's great. You can start to see how this pattern will build up. Now I'm going to go off the edges a little bit on this one here. No, we'll pop that one just there, look. And for the moment I'm going to bring in a different colour, but I might come back to that blue. And that's the beauty of it. You can just keep swapping and swapping until you've got all the different colours and the pattern that you want. So now we're going to go onto this lovely deep lilac colour. It's called Heliotrope. And let's give that right there in the middle. Very nice. Oops. The cat likes to sit on my work table at night time, so I have to be careful that I don't end up with lots of things covered in cat hairs. Doesn't matter how I try and discourage her, this seems to be one of her favourite places. Let's pop that way around, just there. That's great. And we'll pop it up there as well. Let's turn that around a little bit and pop that in there. So you can see how I'm starting to build this pattern up very quickly, very easily. Now I've obviously got a few gaps here because I didn't think it through and really work out exactly where everything was going to go. That's left me a few gaps, which is absolutely fine. So let's take that off there, and we'll just borrow from another selection. This is what I call my circles selection. We'll just borrow from there one of the stamps, and let's see what colour. We'll bring that one in again. And it goes with the design because it's circles or circular in shape, and I'm just going to pop that one right in the middle. So it's turning out slightly differently to that one, which is absolutely fine. Let's pop another one up here. Yep, liking how that's going. I'm going to swap this one then for an even smaller one. A smaller circle. Let's go for... Now then, I seem to have a couple... Oh, let's go for this one here. That's perfect. Pop you on there. Change colour again. And fill in some of these gaps. So you can see here how you can swap designs. You can go from one set to another to fill in where you need to fill in. There's no set rules to this at all, as by now I'm sure you're kind of getting the hang of that. But really, well, there definitely isn't any set rules. You can do whatever you like just to create something that is pleasing to you. I'm just going to bring in at this point this darker colour here and go back to my little favourite circle, and I'm going to pop that on top of these cogwheels. Now the minute we start layering up, you can see, I know I keep talking about this, but I can't emphasise it enough, you can see how it keeps adding a bit more depth to the whole image. I mean, that's so sweet. We could even use that same, well, let's do it with all of them actually. Let's just use the same colour and put a middle in all of these large cogs. It just adds so much more interest. What it does is it lifts the piece and stops it from looking really flat. I think that's how I'm trying to describe the effect that it has. Last two. And you really start to get the picture there. Now I'm going to clean that one off, swap over to another shape. That one's a bit, let's go back to that one actually, I rather like that one. And just keep this colour going, because I think again that just lifts it from being a little bit too pale, which is always good to have an awareness of. Do you need a colour to contrast slightly with what's already on there? So there we've created very quickly, very easily, quite a random pattern. Very similar to that one there. Now of course what you need to do now is to iron that on, I don't know what, my iron has like circles on it, 1, 2, 3 or 4. So I would iron this at like a number 3, which I guess would be for a cotton setting. And that will just fix that in place then rather well. If you don't have a stamp like, you know, something similar to that where it's already got 3 or 4 components in it, you can create something similar by using a larger block and putting 3 different stamps on top of it. And you can also, of course, colour them in different inks. So let's have a look at what this would look like if we stamp these ones up. Do that one that colour. And on it goes. So already we're creating pattern just with one block but 3 stamps on it. I have to remember which way around I've done this, don't I? But it's the same principle as we created there with the cog stamp, where we're just going to link with the images that are already on there. So let's twist that one, let's give that one round that way. and we can start to build up again a random image, a random pattern, like we did with the cogs. And when we feel that we've put enough leaves on, we can then add some smaller elements to it to link the spaces together. I hope that makes sense. Makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to you. Let's turn that one round this way this time. Now you can, of course, swap these around a little bit on the same block so that you get a slightly different effect. Let's see what that's going to look like. Of course, it is all about experimenting. You'll find ways that you like and you think that's really good, I really like how that one's turned out, and there'll be other ways and you think not quite so keen on that. But that's all part of the process of experimenting with it and just giving it a go. Let's have a look now. I think we'll do that one. Which way do I want that one to go? Probably like that, I think. So just as with this one here, you're starting to build up, you know, a nice, what I call random pattern. Now if you don't want, you know, what I can do here is start to fill in with some of the others. So let's just go to this green here. I'm going to wipe these two off for the moment. Make sure there's no ink left on them at all. And I'm just going to come into this lovely emerald green leaf here and ink that one up, because I'd like that just there. There we go. So I've managed to be able to do just one by making sure that there was no ink left on the other two. Let's see what else I might like to do. I think I'd like to put another one up there, so we'll carry on with that just for the moment. Let's have a look here. Put that way around, whoops. There we go, that's looking lovely. Now I think I've got enough of that leaf just for the moment, so I'm actually going to clean that off and take it off. And I want to go back to this tiny leaf here because I rather like that one. Well, I like them all, but let's just see where I might want to add that one again. I think we'll have that one down here. Yes, I'm really liking the look of this. Now I'd like to put something in these gaps here that's not necessarily leaf shaped. So let's take all these off. Well, we'll leave those on just for the moment and go back to my small block and see what I've got. This looks rather nice here. And I'm going to bring in a different green at this point. I'm going to bring in the forest green. And I brought this one in because it's quite a bit darker than the others, so again it's going to give a nice contrast both with the colour and with the shape of the stamp. So let's see what happens when we do this. Rather lovely. Need to just ink that one up a little bit better. If you can see there, it's just ever so slightly faded around that edge there. Let's try this one. That's much better. So you can see how you can build up the patterns using a couple of, or 2 or 3 stamps on the same block, or using a stamp that's already got 3 or 4 components to it, like the cog stamp had. But this is really looking lovely now. One more up there perhaps. Actually, yeah, one more down here. Let's have a look down here. Slightly off the edge. And slightly off the edge up there. One more, I think. Just there. And you've got two very different effects there, but using the same principle, if you like, just printing randomly. We've done it before as part of the samples, so you can see how easy it is to transfer that onto fabric. But if you'd rather use a grid, let's see how that would work using a grid on fabric. So if I take this grid that I made and showed you last week and place the fabric over the top of it, then you can just about see the grid underneath it. So if we wanted to produce something on fabric like that, for example, like this one, then we've got the 9 squares that we can do exactly that with. That fits directly onto there. If we want to do something that's a bit more like this, we can still use the lines coming down the way to help us to line up the main images, and then we can fill in the rest, fill in the gaps with the smaller ones. So let's use the grid so that you can see how that would work. So I'm going to start off with the large, again it's almost like the centre of a lemon or something, or the centre of a lime. And I'm going to do that first of all in this lovely poppy red colour. Let's pull the fabric a bit further over. That's it. So there's a line down here. I'm not sure whether you can see that there or not. Perhaps if I bring it a little bit further up, you'll get more of a sense of it, hopefully. And I'm just going to follow that line down. Now, one thing just to notice here, so on my block it gives me 1 inches, 2 inches and 3 inches. It doesn't matter whether yours is in inches or centimetres or whether it's in anything at all. The thing to just remember here is which way round are you printing with the block. So if I think each time that my number 2 needs to be at the bottom as I stamp down. Now if you've got a block that doesn't have any markings on it at all, it would be worth you just making a couple of markings, you know, on either edge, just so that it reminds you which way around to do it, because this isn't a complete circle. So if I did it differently each time, I wouldn't get the same repetitiveness in the pattern. It would be a little bit too random. So I'm going to make sure that as I turn the block over like this, then it's the number 2 that's along the bottom edge. There we go. And again. Now that one was, if you like, positioned on the line that was in the middle part of the square, if that makes sense to you. So in other words, I've done it there, in the middle of that line there. The next one I'm going to do in the middle of this line here. And so on and so forth. If it helps, you can always put a little bit of masking tape on either side of your fabric to keep it in place so that your fabric doesn't move. Now that fabric did move a little bit, so if you prefer to do that and that helps your confidence with it, then please do. And another one. There we go. I'm going to carry on with this same one. I'm going to go down this line this time. So as you can see, these circles kind of they go off a little bit up towards, if it was a clock, up towards, you know, 2 o'clock. They kind of come out of the circle shape a little bit, but it's all doing the same thing because I'm making sure that I check each time that that's the way round I'm using the stamping block. And again onto this line. Can you see here I've got some green ink, because that was still on my finger from the last inking that we did. Now because it's ink, it takes a while to dry, so it is really important that you wipe your fingers in between. I hadn't realised that that was on. Now let's just see if I can get that off with the baby wipe. I doubt whether I'll be able to do that, but let's just have a quick look. No, that's well and truly on now. So is that little bit of red smudge there. So it's good for you to see that. It's good for you to know that, you know, occasionally it happens. And there's not a great deal you can do about it, but what I can do instead is make that part of the design now. You know, if I was on a big piece and I'd got most of it done and then all of a sudden I noticed something like that, then it's how do you correct your mistakes. So I was going to use this lovely pale aqua colour, but instead I'm going to switch to the emerald green because that's the colour, in fact, that is on it. So let's go to a different stamp, and I'm really thinking out of the box here now because obviously I didn't intend for that to happen. So I'm going to look for something that I think might just be able to cover that up without it looking too random in the pattern. But let's have a look. I've got a little arrow here, so I'm going to see what happens if I use this little arrow and place it over. There we go. Now all of a sudden we've got an arrow as part of the pattern. That wasn't my intention at all, but that's okay. We'll just go with it. Now then, let's just get that. I'm going to pull those now so that those circular shapes are actually in the squares of the grid underneath it, and then that gives me a bit more of an idea as to where I'm putting this arrow, because I'm using the lines in between to position it up with. Because I actually put baby wipe on there with, obviously with moisture in it, and then put the ink straight on top, that's now beginning to bleed a bit. I'm not sure whether you can see that or not. Let's bring that closer up just to give you a better look there. Last one. There we go. Take that one off there, bring back the little block that I was going to use, and we'll carry on. So I'm just going to stamp that one in the middle now. This is turning out to be a completely different pattern to what I imagined. And I may end up liking it and I may not. Now, if your fabric selection, oops, there we go. If you don't, what I'm trying to say is if you don't have a great deal of fabric to play around with, these are just old pieces for me, then it's perhaps as well that you do a practice onto paper as to the design that you're actually wanting, and then you transfer that to your fabric. Now when I put this into there, that's going to bleed as well because it's still got that moisture to it. That's just good to have an awareness of that. And maybe it's an effect that you'd actually like, to get it to bleed slightly. So if it is, you know how to do that and what to do with it. So you can see how this is working, how this block's building up now. It's got a similar thing going on to this one here, not quite the same, but again, same principles. of grid work basically. I think what I need to do is bring another arrow into it now for the design to make a little bit more sense than it is doing, because it just looks a bit odd to me with these arrows going off. So let's see. The arrow doesn't want to stay on the block, look. Let's see what happens. In fact, that's better. I'm going to put that at the other side now. That makes a little bit more sense, I guess. You get the idea. Can't say that's one of the best pieces I've ever done, but in principle you get to see how you can use the grid underneath if you want to. You can also print onto fabric using these rubber blocks. Now, we've not really looked at these over the last 3 weeks because they don't work as well on paper. They actually need something, a bit of a softer surface for them to work. I have quite a few of these. Some of them are really effective, some of them aren't. I had a bit of a practice and a play last night on a scrappy piece of fabric, and I have a lovely sunflower block, this one here, but it's so big it just will not ink the whole thing. It just won't work somehow. I'm going to have to really find a way to get that to produce a consistent image. I don't know if you can see it underneath there, I've been stamping on top of this, but you know, it was fine around the edges, but that in the middle it just wouldn't stamp down. Whereas this one gave a great result, as you can see here. So again, it's just the same principle of inking it up as if it was just like the little silicone stamp, making sure you've really got enough ink on there. Let's just turn that fabric around a little bit, do it that way around, and then pressing down. Now you need to press really hard here, and obviously you might even find it easier to do it standing up so that you can really get some weight behind it, and obviously trying not to move the block so that it doesn't smudge the pattern. But that's come out rather nicely. You can just see it's faded a little bit there in the middle, but that's okay because I will end up putting another little pattern on top of that anyway. And with regards to trying to match it up, that really just does take practice. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to line this edge up with that edge there as best I can. And press again, really, really press. Let's see if that worked. That's pretty good actually. But again, even though I've put a lot of pressure on as I was pressing it down, the middle section here hasn't come out just quite as dark as the rest of it. So again, if that happens, it's not an issue, it's just knowing what to do about it and knowing how you can, it's not a mistake, but knowing how you can still make the piece work. So let's just go back to that little pattern that I had there, and we'll pop it onto that piece and bring in a darker colour here. Let's have a look. Something that will stand out against the colour that we've already put on. And I'm just going to go over the middle of that with that. Now, because it's a silicone block, it's much more flexible, and you can get your weight behind it a lot easier. So there you go, all of a sudden now you've made that piece work even though it was faded in the middle. And the same again on here. There we go. So that's rather nice. I mean, I could even add, on this one, as you can see, I've added, let's move this over a little bit so you can see better. I've just added bits in the middle and then little bits with my faithful little circle on either end of it. So let's just do that one more time. We'll take that off. Whoops. Well, actually no, let's do something a bit different. Let's stick with this pattern here and see what happens if I try to join these two up together. So we'll just keep the same colour on it, this ultramarine blue, and place it over the middle there. And again there. So different effects, both rather nice. You know, you could cut this out if you liked and stitch into it, put little buttons on it and things. What would that look like if we put some buttons on? Let's have a look. And that's rather sweet, and that would look lovely done as part of a book cover perhaps. I'd like to show you how you can create a nice cushion cover or a bag with a pillowcase. So here I bought from Tesco 2 standard pillowcases, £4. They came in this little bag, which I then decided to do a little autumn stamping on by using the background of the bubble wrap first and then randomly using leaf designs just to stamp around it. I'll probably end up putting a little ribbon on the top of this so that it actually creates a little drawstring bag, if you like. Now, the first thing to do is to square off the pillowcase. So you do that by creating a triangle like this. Can you see that? Yes. So we're creating a triangle so that we know that we're going to get a square, and we're going to cut the opening away. We're going to cut that off. So you just follow the line up the pillowcase, like such. And that can be made into something else, or you can do what I do and use it just as practice pieces for doing certain designs and seeing what colourways you like. Fold that triangle again, and at that point there, that is now your midpoint. So we're just going to mark it with a little pencil, like that. Unfold it. There's your little mark, and that's given you the middle of this square. Now, if you want to make it into a cushion, then you could either hand stitch the top together once you've got the filling in with just little over stitches, or you could machine stitch it, or if you were really feeling creative, you could even put a zip in it. If you wanted to turn this into a shopping bag instead, then from these pieces here, from this that you've just cut out, you would be able to create 2 handles that you could just pull that down a little bit so you can see. Basically you would cut out 2 handle shapes here along this side. I'm just going to fold it so that you get the idea as to what that might look like. And then you could hand stitch those onto the top so that you've then got a shopping bag with a handle obviously on each side. Let me show you what it looks like made into a cushion. So the opening is still, I've still left this opening here because I'm not sure whether I'll end up using this as a cushion or whether or not I'll end up turning it into a shopping bag. But just for now, I've brought it in as a cushion. Now the reason that we start with a midpoint, particularly with a design like this, I wanted to show you this design because it's very easy to do for a first attempt at creating something, you know, that's going to be used for something, a bag or a cushion. And once we've got the midpoint, it's then quite easy, with a little bit of practice, to start spreading your way outwards. So let's see how I've created this. It's a good idea to decide what colour palette you want to work with before you get going on this. So let's just take a minute to decide what colours I'm going to use. And I'm going to pull them out here because I rather like those colours. Let's pop another one in as well. So let's have those colours there. You can refer to your colour chart that you did, well, maybe you didn't do it, but that I showed you in the first week, and see what kind of colour scheme you want there. But let's just start with these and see where we head off from there. So I'm going back to this lovely selection here. It's a woodware craft collection and it's called Clear Magic Singles, and I know that it's still available because it's not that long since I bought it. Do you know what, I've actually got ink on there, so let's just wash that off with another wipe before we start. Oh, no, it looks to have dried, that's fine, that's fine. Dry that off. Sorry, to go back to these. Yeah, it's a really useful set to have, is this, because it has so many different circles in it of so many different sizes. They're really good for, you know, filling in gaps, if you like. So this is one that I would definitely recommend that you have a look out for. So Woodware Craft Collection. I'm pretty sure you can get it from Budley Crafts, which is where you were getting your inks from. If not, just type into Google Woodware Craft Collection Clear Magic Singles, and hopefully you'll come across that if it's something that you feel is of interest to you. So I'm going to start off with the biggest one to go in the middle. And I'm going to start off with quite, now remember, I've got the 1, 2, 3 inches on the bottom here. So I'm going to make sure that that's the way I stamp things, so that it's always in the same way. It doesn't matter much with this one because it is quite a good circle, but it's good to get into the habit of doing that. I'm going to use a dark colour in the middle so that it really draws your attention into the middle. Now, if in doubt at all, bring back one of your pieces of fabric that you were using as a bit of a tester and just do a test stamp onto that fabric. It won't go through to the other fabric. Now that's interesting because that's come out quite pale, so I need to just put a little bit more ink onto that one. So let's do that, just to ink it up a bit better. that's looking a little bit more even now. So I'm going to trust that that's going to work. So I'm going to go for the middle of that circle there to go over that mark there. And that's pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to leave that there so that I can use that for testing on if I need to. I always wipe off the blocks straight away. I don't leave them sitting. Even though the ink takes, you know, it will sit on the block for quite a while. I just feel, again, it's a good practice to get into. So then I'm going to use one of the smaller blocks and start to build up around this. Now what I think of is like a clock. So I'm going to go up to 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Is the way my mind kind of works with it, if you like. I guess you could also do north, south, east and west. So again, I'm using the bottom of the block that's got the inch numbers on it so that I know that I'm always doing this in the same way. Using a circular design is a little bit more forgiving than using a completely geometric design. There's something about the circle that just you can make mistakes with it without it showing up quite so much. When I'm calling them mistakes, that's not really what I mean, but so let's go there. So now I'm going to look at this space in between and fill in to create the next layer of circle, if you like. That's great, please do that. So then we're going to go back to the quadrants again. To use as a guide, and I'm going to use this aqua colour this time. And I'm going to take it above that one at the 12 o'clock mark again. So you can see how easy it is to do. I mean, it's a mandala design really. By following this method, you actually don't really need a grid, because you've already got guidelines from what you've put down before. So we're just following on from these. There we go. I'm going to switch to a smaller circle now to fill in these little spaces. And I'm going to go back to that lovely garnet colour that we had in the middle. Now this has a design that's like a little diamond, so I'm going to make sure that the points are facing inwards towards the middle. Turn the piece around if you need to. Now you don't have to do it this way that I've done it. I just find this a really simple way to be guided by what's gone on before, if you like. Now can you see here that these two are a bit near to each other because I've missed the spacing out slightly there. It doesn't matter, it's fine. Once you get the whole design on, you probably won't even notice. And so we're starting to build this up. Now you can make this circle as small or as large as you like, obviously. Let's go back to how I had it in the beginning. There we go. And I'm going to take another one and go beyond this again. So again, we're going back to the quadrants north, south, east, west, or 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock there. And let's bring in this lovely vibrant celadon blue. Now this one doesn't matter too much which way around you're putting it, because it's got a broken edge, as it were. Follow that one again. And that one. And then that one. Now that looks quite nice just as it is. You could leave it at that. It's entirely up to you. You could start to add a few more, you know, little circles in here. In fact, let's try that with the celadon, with this lovely celadon blue, and that starts linking the colours together a wee bit more. So here we go in the middle, and you can see how that starts to build up again. And you get a really nice linking of the colourways then. And that starts to work really nice as a pattern. I'm preferring this colourway to the one that I showed you in the sample on the cushion cover. That turned out for me not just quite my colour palette, but I will show you what I did to liven it up a little bit. Well, to liven it up a lot actually. So you start to get the idea of how you can keep building this out and building this out. I'll show you one more layer around here to fill in these gaps here. Again, we're going to go for quite a big one because that's now quite a big gap. So that will definitely work in there. And let's go back to that lovely smoky blue colour, so that again it keeps the colours linked to each other. Now this is quite a significant size, so it's going to, you know, it's going to be quite dominant. If we bring the other cushion back and see, you can see how that one there is quite a dominant feature in this, along with the middle one. So be really clear when you're putting this one on, if this is the pattern that you decide to do, that that's the one that you want, that colour is the one that you want in this outer edge. Feel free to speed this up a little bit yourselves on your own video as I just go around this, because obviously it's going to take a little while. So as I'm adding this outer edge, you can see that I didn't get the spacing just quite right. I mean, I am doing this rather fast for demonstrating, otherwise you'd be watching this for hours. If I was doing it for a piece that I was really, really wanting to get it more accurate, I would take it a little bit slower than this. Almost done. Now for me it's still looking a little bit flat just now, so I am going to add something to these here, and I'm going to bring in that shape again, and I'm going to use the garnet colour over this, just to lift. I like this colour, but just seeing it as it is there completely flat, I think it needs something in the middle, so let's just give it a little bit of a wow factor. That's better. And so it goes on until we go all the way around. As you can see, I've finished putting in the middle of the circles just to lift that grey up a little bit. I've also filled in this one here with a different blue and then pulled that blue in round the edge with smaller circles. Now you could carry on expanding and expanding right to the edge if you wanted. You could also do some little patterns up in the corners if you felt so inclined that echoed this, by maybe starting off with the big circle that's in the middle in the corners and then perhaps doing this kind of effect, so you're getting quarter circles in the corners, and that would also look very nice. I prefer this colourway to the one that I did on the cushion cover. Let me show you what I did with this though to just brighten it up a little bit. Given that I wasn't hugely keen on the colour scheme as it turned out, as soon as I started to add the buttons with these lovely pops of colour, That really made a difference for me. Not only did it sort of finish the cushion cover off, or the bag, whatever you want to make it into, but it just brought the whole thing to life. So that's another thing that you can do to enhance the design that you've already done, if that's what you feel like doing. Well, that's it, folks. That's the end of our 4-week printing course. I hope that you're having as much fun with it in your experimenting and your creativity as I have had in creating the samples and showing you the different techniques. So over the next few weeks, play with it, just have fun with it, enjoy it. That's the main thing. Wishing you all the very best. Bye bye.